Today we're going to draw a house in a snow-covered forest. There's not much to sketch, just the basic outlines of the house and a rough indication of the major trees. I'll then use a cloth dipped in graphite powder to lay down the basic tonal values. As it's not just snowy, it's also misty, there are mostly flat tonal values in the scene, with only a few details to draw, so this is a perfect beginner drawing. As always, I start with the most distant objects and then make my way forward. The distant mountain only has a few peaks visible above the mist. I suggest these peaks using random vertical strokes, and to get these peaks random, I think of an erratic heart rate monitor, with some of the peaks higher, others lower, some closer together, and others further apart. I then also ensure that these peaks fade away towards the bottom to show that they are disappearing into the mist. To draw the distant trees, I first add a line for the trunk. Each of these trunks make a different height and angle, because this makes the trees look more natural than if they were all uniform. For the branches, I add more of my random heart rate monitor peaks, only this time they are generally shorter at the top and become longer towards the bottom of the tree. Now these trees are part of a forest, which means that each one is at a varying distance away from us. So you will see that I use a different pencil and apply a different amount of pressure onto the pencil as I draw each tree, and this makes each tree more or less lost in the mist. And just look at how much depth this is adding to the drawing. As you draw, make sure you overlap your trees. If you don't, they will all look like they've been planted next to each other, and then you'll lose all that distance that you've been building up by applying different pressures. The next trick that I'm using to create the illusion of depth is to vary where the trunk meets the ground. The further up the tree is, the higher up on the page I end the bottom of the trunk. There seems to be a road in this area, so I add the suggestion of a fence and darken the ground on the right hand side. And this makes the road recede into the mist towards the left hand side. This far right hand tree has its peak peeping out above the mist, so I use a darker pencil to draw the peak. As I move down the tree though, I reduce the pressure on the pencil to fade out the detail. The lower part of the tree I simply suggest by laying down some graphite using the cloth. The house is very basic, so we don't want to add too much detail to it. I start off by adding 3 different tonal values, one to each wall and then another onto the roof to show the 3 different angles. The only details we will add to the house is the overhang of the roof, the gutters, and a few lines on the roof to suggest the shingles. There's also this weird box next to the house, which I decide to draw as it adds a bit of mystery to the scene. What on earth would they keep inside such an odd construction? Is it for the dog, or is it where they keep the firewood? Using the same technique as the distant mountain peaks, I suggest some grasses growing against this odd box. Now we need to draw a snow-covered ground. I think you agree with me that trying to draw all these fine details would take forever. So we'll simply suggest the details. The way we do this is to lay down random marks across the ground. And if you look carefully, you will see that these marks lie in almost horizontal patches. So we'll also wiggle and squiggle these patches in. Lighter and smaller patches towards the back, and darker and bigger patches towards the front to show distance. For these foreground trees, we'll need to add just a tiny bit more detail. So I'll add a line for the trunk, and then draw a heartbeat out for the branch. I then go back across the branch, adding more heartbeats to it to suggest the leaves, almost like mini trees. Notice how the branches point more upwards towards the top of the tree, and then they gradually become more horizontal towards the bottom. Then at the very bottom, you have 1 or 2 branches pointing downwards. You'll also notice that the left-hand silhouette of the tree is not the same as the right-hand silhouette. So you need to do the same to make your trees look natural. And a nice trick for getting this right is to cover the one side of the tree with a piece of paper so that you don't inadvertently mirror it on the second half. I then darken and thicken up the trunk to complete the tree. I'll now go ahead and complete the other trees in exactly the same way. So I want you to notice how I am filling up the center of the tree with more leaves than on the outsides, and this adds body and depth to the trees. I also want you to notice something else. As we have no direct sunlight, none of the objects in the scene are casting a shadow. I then finish off the drawing by adding a bit of contrast to the left of the house in order to show where the house ends on that side. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you have, please like the video and leave a comment below. Please also subscribe so we can inform you when we release new videos. Then if you'd like to follow the draw along version of this class, you can do that at onlineartlessons.com. We have hundreds of drawing and painting projects waiting for you there. I'll see you next time.